Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to go back to the line of questioning that Senator Cornyn was pursuing. Dr. Throckmorton, back in March, the FDA commissioner identified 20 drugs out of the over 20,000 drugs that are available in the United States. 20 he identified as being solely made in China or containing an API that was solely sourced from China. Further, I believe that in this report, it was determined that none of these drugs were considered critical drugs. And I think the criteria for being critical is a drug for which there is no available substitute. So first of all, is that your understanding of the extent of dependence on China as a source of drugs and API? Because certainly that makes it sound as though there's not a great deal of reliance on Chinese sources for critical drugs. Is that your understanding?
Senator, let me answer your question by going back to where we found ourselves in March and the situation we needed to respond to. So as we typically respond to an increase in needs for drug, we see drug shortages occur. When drug shortages occur, I have a staff whose sole job 24/7 is to reach out to manufacturers, look at API manufacturers, identify possible sources for those products. So if we go back to March, what we found ourselves in was a situation where we were looking to identify the products that were essential and which products were not as essential for the immediate response to COVID. That drug shortage team, along with work in other offices, went to work looking at the available products. Where were they made? What products were available? And the short answer to your question is yes, you're right. China had a small footprint as far as the creation of manufacturing of those drugs. Having said that,
can I just want a clarification here, Doctor? Sure. Are you saying that this report, these 20 drugs that were identified, these are just within the universe of drugs that are for the purpose of treating COVID-19, or is it more broad? Is it broader than that?
Great question, and I apologize if I wasn't clear. Definitely broader than that. And again, it starts with where we found ourselves in March. We knew less than we do now about the impact of COVID. We knew much less than we know about now about the specific drugs that are needed. And so our focus was on products that we knew were historically in shortage, products that we anticipated would likely to be needed in hospitals. As we learned more, we needed to we responded and evolved.
Yeah, my question is focusing much more broadly than just on COVID-19. I want to understand the American public has an understandable concern about whether or not and to what extent we could be reliant on any one country, and most of all, a adversarial country, on something as important as life-saving medicines. But it sounds to me like from this March report, the FDA's conclusion is that there are no drugs that are considered critical drugs, in other words, drugs for which there is no substitute, on which we rely on China, and less than 0.1% of all drugs are sole sourced from China or contain an API that is solely sourced from China. So do I have the basic facts correct?
Well, I want to get back with you. I'll have to get back with you about the basic facts. I don't want to mislead you about that. But I do want to agree with your focus on the larger issue of total availability. Whether a product comes from a specific country or not is important. I'm not minimizing that, but it's more important for me as a U.S. federal drug official to make sure the drug is available from somewhere to meet the needs of the American public. So if it's China or it's France or it's whatever, it is of interest, but I'm even more interested in knowing the total available market. Can it meet the needs of the U.S. or not? Right. If it can, and it's done to high quality, then that's the piece I'm going to want to stay focused on.
So we had certainly in my state of Pennsylvania, we heard from healthcare providers, hospitals, and pharmacies about shortages of drugs that they wanted to be able to administer, and much of which was related to COVID treatment. It was pain medicine, it was antibiotics, it was inhalers, it was a variety of medicines, and there were shortages. So, could you characterize the source of that? Is it just because there was a sudden spike in demand because suddenly we had a lot of people with COVID-19? Or were there other factors contributing to these shortages?
So that's a terrific question. Short answer, we don't know all of the factors that led to that, whether it's distribution challenges with particular hospitals, or whether it was solely related to isolated demand in particular areas. There were a variety of different factors that drove spot shortages that were extremely serious. So where I started before was to say we focused on the larger market, and that has been our historic goal. With COVID, we had to start worrying about your hospitals in Pennsylvania.
And just as my last, I'm probably out of time. Just the last quick final question. Are you aware of any case where a source of these medicines from overseas, the country or the manufacturer overseas decided not, for whatever reason, not to distribute to the United States medicines that they normally would have? And was there a conscious decision to withhold medicines that American consumers needed?
I'm not aware of any case where the country carried through on that threat to withhold medicines. No.